Hello everyone. So, as today is Sorry Day, we thought that we could explain to you guys what is this special date and what were the circumstances that led to its creation. To do so, we are going to talk a little about Australia's colonization, the mistreatment of the indigenous population and their suffering in the beginning of the 20th century, as well as its effects in today Australia's society.
Well, let's start by the beginning. The first European to discover Australia in 1770 was the British captain James Cook, but it was only in 1778 that the land was claimed by Arthur Phillipps, representing the British Crown. As we can imagine, the cultural shock was intense. Both civilizations had nothing in common whatsoever, and, due to territory battles, the introduction of new disease, and the loss of lands, the Aboriginal population was reduced by 90% between 1788 and 1900. In the beginning of the 20th century, the Australian government decided to start taking indigenous children away from their families and obliging them to live in institutions without being able to speak in their native languages, learning how to live in a white society. The authorities usually target children of mixed descent, the half-caste, as they said. According to the chief protector, the man who was considered legal guardian of the young Aboriginals, this was part of a mission that consisted of getting rid of the Aboriginal problem, as they said also, in a very short time. They used to say that in 3 generations of marriage between whites and natives, the Aboriginal gene would disappear and that these people would be completely integrated in the white society. But of course, it was a very wrong and harmful idea.
This racist law started by only taking children between 3 to 10 years old, but it escalated into something far greater. In 1911, chief protectors could now take Aboriginal descendants up to 21 years old. This stresses the fact that the government had the intention to take over a whole generation. The situation led to a lot of suffering from the parents whose kids were taken away and by the stolen children as well. The children thought that they were alone in the world, considered as a problem by others, having low self-esteem, loss of identity, loneliness, a poor education, and even drug problems. Their families suffered a lot too, having now a hole in their lives, and sometimes not being able to visit them. Some kids were taken soon after their birth without knowing their mothers, and others were taken by force by authorities who usually didn't care about their family feelings. Normally, the fathers started having drinking issues, saying that they had nothing to live for anymore. The number of children taken is said to be well over 6,200.
The consequences of these events can be found nowadays in the Aboriginal community. There are several cases of drugs or alcohol consumption at abnormal levels. The condition of life for Aboriginal is pretty low, and many of them are still traumatized for life. As so, a huge opposition emerged from the community demanding justice for the fallen culture. Depression began to rise, and in 1928, the Prime Minister of Australia, Kevin Rudd, gave a speech in which he apologized on the behalf of the Australian government. This day was known as the Sorry Day and is now a holiday celebrated in Australia every May 26. This day gives people the chance to come together and share the steps towards healing for the stolen generation, where everyone can go to public barbecues, lunches, concerts, and write a message in the Sorry book.
So, in conclusion, we think that it's very important to spread what happened during this dark chapter of Australia's history, so that the future generations learn with their past generations' mistakes. But to what extent can Aboriginal suffering be healed? Of course that with so many pain and suffering left behind, it's almost impossible to give Aboriginals back their old families, their old culture, habits and language. but the Australia government is trying its best to heal this population with many social activities, programs, and mainly the Sorry Day.